Hello, welcome, dear viewers and cinephiles alike. Batman Ultra 7 here. Today I am talking about what is my 9th favorite film as I go through my 10 favorite films of all time in this series. Today's film is Sherlock Holmes, directed by the magnificent action/crime director Guy Ritchie. And I do this as I plug in my laptop with an HDMI cord to my TV because I live a broken existence. It stars Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law in the starring roles Holmes and Watson, the best depictions of the characters in live action in my opinion. So Sherlock fans can go suck it because Downey is better. Hello, many tweets telling me why they hate my guts. Anyways, let's get on with the show. This film released in 2009 with the best introductory scene of, I think, any film I've ever seen, showing the respective logos of the associated companies in an actually interesting way that I think is only rivaled by the Batman 89 intro somewhat. The music by Hans Zimmer here feels so steampunk yet fresh. Just from Downey running, you already get to know what this version of Holmes is like. I, for one, love Holmes' vision, as the DVD special features aptly describe the slow-motion scenes where Holmes analyzes his environment and attacks likewise. It brilliantly shows the hyper-intelligent mind of the titular hero. The music that they use when you see the occult-like sacrifice happening is so good, and really tells you how sinister Blackwood and Co.'s intentions are. The first interaction between Watson and Holmes is just pure gold. I mean, the comedy in this film is brilliant. The action is incredibly engaging. It takes its time, like any Ritchie picture. I will continue to say that no other director directs action quite like Guy Ritchie. The lighting in this first scene is brilliant. The reveal of Mark Strong's character is so good and very creepy. It really is uncanny that Mark Strong has played two incredibly brilliant villains for Warner Bros. Production in 10 years apart, I think. Love the set design for this film. Guy Ritchie really knows how to create this version of London. Love that the film cuts to the title through a picture. Brilliant. Ritchie has a lot of great match cuts in here, and in his filmography in general. Again, the set design for London is so accurate and versatile. The comedy in this is so on point, which is incredibly consistent with Ritchie's filmography. I still think that Downey Jr.'s version of Sherlock Holmes is easily the most accurate depiction of the character, and I think the direction Ritchie went elevates the character above the original novels, which can get incredibly contrived and boring at times. No offense to Arthur Conan Doyle. Sherlock Holmes has to be the most memeable RDJ appearance. I love Holmes' personality in these two films. Again, at the Royale, the lighting is very period and fantastic. The set design of the whole place is so on point. I also love how it depicts the way Holmes sees and hears the world, hearing every fork, knife, and any other sound in the room because it's a gift and a curse, being so attentive to his environment by his own intelligence. The character work for Holmes in this film shows that he's, kind of a dick. Well, a dick a lot. But he's a redeemable one. Which seems to be RDJ's strong suit. I love how Holmes goes from deduction to deduction without realizing the damage he's doing to the conversation and dinner he's having with Watson's girlfriend and soon-to-be wife, which clearly displays the type of personality and social problems Holmes has dealt with his entire life. Now to one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which I will say a lot of the time because this movie is great. When Holmes is fighting for money. Great music for the scene, very folksy and energetic. Hans Zimmer is fantastic, as always. The attention to detail of the whole set design is, as always, brilliant. Something I will attribute to this film multiple times in this video. I love that even in a fight, it's all about showing Holmes's high intelligence as well as hinting towards a character we do not yet know. Irene Adler, who is mentioned in the books if you do not know. I love the pre-planning of Holmes that shows how brilliant he is as a detective, fighter, and tactician in general. Man, the satisfaction of RDJ explaining how he's going to kick that guy's butt, then doing it, knows no bounds. I love how nondescript Holmes is after he beats this guy, because he's not one to notice social cues or anything, which is really interesting. I love how well this film sets up certain plot threads that will make sense later, like the guard suffocating at the hands of Blackwood. Holmes controlling flies through music is so brilliantly disgusting, and so Holmes. I love how invested Holmes is in his little experiments like this, and Watson just opens the jar, letting the flies out. The recreation of the Industrial Revolution era structures is so well done. If you do not know what that is, then you should go back to high school and attend your history class. I love how unable Holmes is able to discern how people feel, but only facts and thoughts, and his relationship with Watson is what humanizes him. Again, Zimmer's musical brilliance is on display in every scene. I love that. I love that, man. Both Holmes and Watson's wear is very period, but so visually well. Awesome. I love how Ritchie uses the crow as almost a literary device, similar to what Edgar Allan Poe does in aptly named The Raven, which you should also read. A motif for when someone is about to die, because Ritchie uses this film as almost an extension of the novels themselves. I love the shots of Blackwood's cell telling you so much about the character, as well as Blackwood whispering quotes from Revelation, which is an interesting detail. Cinematography in this is beyond brilliant. Whoever was the cinematographer in this should be given an award. Man, that music is so good. I love Sherlock with a pipe. I love the music that goes with Blackwood's execution. There's just something about it that speaks to the sinister nature of it all, the darkness. Lord Blackwood is such a brilliant brand new creation for Sherlock Holmes' adversary. Can I even describe how much I love Rachel McAdams in almost anything? I mean, in absolutely anything. She is a brilliant actress, and she should be in more things. She's perfect for Irene Adler, the Catwoman to Sherlock Holmes' Batman. Ritchie is so good at scene blocking, especially in this scene just with Irene and Holmes. The dog farted. I'm sorry, but that's still funny after all these years with this like kind of stoic scenery in 19th century London. Holmes has so many iconic or iconically funny lines in this film. Not surprising that Simon Kinberg is one of the screenwriters on this film. Say what you will about his directing, aka Dark Phoenix, but he's written many bangers. The introduction of Moriarty as a man in the darkness is so amazingly done. The way you have to imagine what this guy really looks like, and you just hear that sinister voice. And that brilliant shot where he flicks out that mini pistol. The debate about ginger midgets and dwarves is priceless. I love the use of point of view in this double scene of sorts, showing what Holmes was doing in one scene in reverse. Because I'm a big fan of utilizing different point of views in cinema in general. The film has such good situational comedy, which is the best kind of comedy in my opinion, because it's so much more fresh. It's funny how there are still creeps in 1890 and Irene completely destroys them with amazing music from Hans Zimmer. I just love it. This might be my favorite soundtrack from Zimmer, tied with Dark Knight. Love Holmes' disguise. It's beyond ridiculous, but it works so well. And you don't really realize till you see how it all comes together. I love how incapable the police is in this movie, almost as bad as the GCPD in the Batman movies. I love how hilariously manipulative Holmes is saying, This is a matter of professional integrity. No girl wants to marry a doctor who can't tell if a man's dead or not. I love how purely terrified the police look and act around the coffin, and how Lestrade acts like he's not completely quivering at the thought of Blackwood being alive. And now he gives us yet another meme. Now we have a firm grasp of the obvious. What does Blackwood have against midgets, though, and gingers too? I mean, that's not right. The raven. Sorry for being discriminate of crows and ravens. The crow is the raven. Shut up. Script. Is yet again present for this discovery of the death of the ginger midget. I love the use of the crow as a motif. Not a crow. What were you thinking, Batman Ultra 7, when you were writing this script? I love the use of the raven as a motif. This film acting just like a novel. I love the use of Holmes and Watson's relationship in these two movies, including the hilarious use of a gypsy that talks about how ugly Mary is going to be at Les Doilies. I love the stark push into Watson at his realization that he needs to help Holmes. That's just great filmmaking. The set design for the Ginger Midget's workshop of sorts again is brilliantly disgusting right down to the fly's detail. I love how much detail goes into all of these places within the story mystery itself, as well as the use of many flashbacks formed within Holmes' own mind. I love how well Ritchie hands small clues and separate happenings for the audience to piece together like Holmes himself. Here we go with yet another amazingly choreographed and shot Ritchie fight scene with some great Zimmer music yet again. I love how unable Sherlock is to beat this big brute, but he still tries anyway, and it's all about the attention to the details of the room and which weapon can beat him. I love how engaging the fight scenes are, because you really gotta look with Holmes to see what he can do to win. That upside down to upside up shot of them running is so good. Guy Ritchie is such a brilliant director. This fight set against the background of the bow is so smart and brilliant to show more of the Industrial Revolution era, which is a really interesting subject. That incredibly engaging and steampunk-like Hans Zimmer score is so good, and I will never stop gushing about Hans Zimmer. And if you're listening, Hans, you're the best. You're the best. I will never stop saying that. I love how by each punch or barrel roll, what have you, the boat slowly rolls out of control, making you worry about who will win. I'm a big sucker for fight scenes that uses the environment in this way. It's both thrilling and terrifying as the boat rolls out of control and the whole thing falls apart in front of them, almost killing both Holmes and Watson. Both Ritchie's one guarantee in any of his films is keeping you on your toes. And of course, Guy Ritchie caps off that thrilling scene with some great humor. I love that Watson is literally writing down their exploits in the form of what we know as the books themselves. I love the use of that in any film. It's just a very interesting point of view. I personally think that's great detail and is just brilliant. Watson saying, "You're not human," after the whole argument they had through the extenuating circumstances of their partnership, which is a very human progression through the interactions in the film. Holmes's interactions with Watson throughout the film is the main focus of this next scene, and of the main character's arc. The arc being Holmes becoming more human and caring about people. In this next scene, Holmes is taken to the secret hideout of the spooky secret society in London that was helmed by Mr. Forehead Wrinkles, Dr. Savannah himself, Mark Strong. I love this setup of this scene with Holmes at a quote-unquote disadvantage, blindfolded. No, not so. In a random location, the society members presume that it is a mystery as to where Holmes is. And the lesson is, never presume, because you'll make a prez out of you and me. And they presume that it is a mystery as to where Holmes is, Holmes hilariously reversing the situation. Ritchie visually showing that reversal as Holmes stands up triumphant. I love how on point but believable Holmes's deduction reasoning is in this film. Not surprising that Blackwood is an illegitimate son. I love how mysteriously and superstitiously they discuss Blackwood's plans. Howard has such a super villain face. Yet another hilarious Sherlock quote. Food for thought. Of course, Holmes is just lingering outside Irene's bedroom. Now we get to hear Sherlock deduce who the mysterious Professor Moriarty might be. Love how little Holmes listens to Irene, especially about letting the alcohol breathe. I am completely resolute in the fact that RDJ is one of the best actors today, and always has been. He has such a great range. The Raven visits once again when Blackwood's father is being murdered by Blackwood, furthering the pointed use of the Raven as a literary device akin to Edgar Allan Poe's works. Blackwood takes the ring of the father. Interesting. It's a very, some interesting symbolism done by Guy Ritchie. Now, after that dark death scene, we get one of the most hilarious scenes. Trust me, I'm a professional. Love the interactions between Holmes and the police. I appreciate each officer having their own personality. It's an interesting detail for Ritchie to add to his film. Crime is common. Logic is rare. I love how separated Holmes is from the death of Reardon. The ways in which Holmes investigates this crime scene of Reardon's death is beyond brilliant and incredibly versatile. RDJ plays it really well. The iconography and imagery of the secret room in there is very well done for the story they're trying to tell. Again, Zimmer's score elevates the whole scene. I love how Holmes sends the constable and other officer on a wild goose chase so he can investigate unhindered. The Raven returns yet again to prelude the death of Standish, which is brilliant. The design of Blackwood post-death is very well done. The slick back hair, the black jacket, very period and also very suiting. The death of Standish is very thematic, but also just really well done. I do have to add how interesting it is that it's Blackwood's plan to prey upon the weakness of America during the Civil War, and Standish dies like a true American, fighting till the end. I love how visceral and detailed the autopsy of the ginger midget is. Zimmer's music continues to carry the scene forward. I love how Holmes leaves his gun so Watson will have to come with him. That Zimmer soundtrack, so good. I told you I wouldn't stop. I love that the sailor just mocks Watson, saying it would not last one day in the Navy. And I should know, my mom was in the Navy. The set design for the slaughterhouse is brilliantly grim and utterly disgusting. The shots for the scene are very detailed yet mysterious. Very well done death trap. Definitely fits the setting and the circumstances. I love that each scene forces Holmes to use his brain to find his way away from a problem. Some films today could learn something about that. The best thing about it is right when you think everything is going to be okay, everything gets 10 times worse. The stakes rise and rise to a climax. Not to mention, all the shots are cut together brilliantly, because whoever edits Ritchie's work is so great. Then to climax that part of the scene, Irene almost falls into the cutting machine, which is a great shot. One of the most stressful scenes in the film, and masterfully shot as well by the master of action, is when Watson is running after Blackwood. Then he triggers a bomb, exploding everything as pieces of wood and metal fly everywhere in slow motion, adding to even more tension. The music by Hans Zimmer heightens the whole scene. I love the whole effect of the ears ringing after a bomb, then slowed and muffled sounds when someone attempts to speak to the other person. Very well done. Then we see Irene enter a plane to leave London, finding that Moriarty is sitting there, saying he's not letting her leave till he says so, threatening Holmes' life. In the next scene, we see a doctor tending to Watson's wounds, secretly Holmes. Mary questioning him trying to leave as soon as possible, trying to deny his humanity no matter his guilt. The pulsing Zimmer score builds and builds as Holmes attempts to solve the entire plot with a white wall behind him with a bunch of 19th century style writing on it, which is honestly the best shot of the film. We hear audio flashbacks as Holmes thinks about everything he's heard and seen throughout this entire case. Then he goes through a mystical ritual in an acid trip type scene. This is shot really well, especially paired with Zimmer's incredibly visceral score. When he wakes up, Irene and Watson are there. The good old doctor cracking a joke. Only a name and no picture. The conversational comedy is so on point in this scene. Sherlock attempts and fails badly to explain how much he cares that Watson is doing well now. Then Sherlock explains that the plot that he solved through the said acid trips of sorts. Do I even need to explain how much I love a detective wearing suspenders? Just see Knives Out. The use of the mystical symbolism to refer to the murders is a brilliant blend of the mystical side and the, murdery one. The man, the ox, the eagle, and the lion. 4 orders. Lestrade is used so hilariously in this film, I have to say, and that actor is so priceless. Now we transition to Lestrade bringing Holmes to Coward's office. It's easy to not notice, but Holmes easily analyzes and looks around the room for evidence he'll need later in the scene. Coward's actor is so wickedly evil, so good. I love how paying attention to every detail in the film, much like Holmes, is rewarded in scenes like this in which Holmes utilizes said knowledge of details. Very Chekhovian, if I do say myself. Coward is a very believable yet evil conviction by which he follows Blackwood, because people have easily blindly followed cults in the past. Again, Zimmer's score elevates the scene with the slowly building music. How terrible is wisdom, if it brings no profit to the wise. I may not smoke or support smoking, but man, does someone smoking a pipe or a cigarette in a movie look cool. See John Constantine, or this movie. Sailor Boy. Seeing Holmes jump out the window is perfectly exhilarating. Love the shot we get of the clock tower as they sail away. Love that we get a focus on the people saying Blackwood is going to destroy the world and holding up those crosses. A very real reaction. The Doomsday Machine of sorts is very well designed. Props to whoever designed that. It looks very period, but also looks like something that would kill people. The Parliament scene is very well shot and designed. I love that Blackwood is standing over them because he's claimed some dominance over the government itself. The film really proves that this version of Holmes really is the world's greatest detective. Sorry, Batman, but you really never used your detective skills in any film. And don't talk to me about that scene in The Dark Knight where he cuts off a piece of the wall. It's not enough. Now we get the return of obviously the best actor and character in all of cinema. Tall French guy who likes to smash Sherlock Holmes. Well, out of context, it does not sound right. Anyways, another versatile and so well choreographed fight scene. Guy Ritchie is an action genius. Man needs to direct a superhero movie. Just don't mention the Robin Hood movie. Just don't. I love that both Watson and Holmes have to disarm the big burly tall French dude. Zimmer music builds and builds as Blackwood realizes he's been thwarted yet again by that Sherlock Holmes. Now we see Irene running away with a piece of the weapon for the professor. We also see the 3 of Sherlock Holmes, Irene Adler, and Blackwood running through what I think is the tunnel from The Third Man. Another great film, which I should absolutely talk about on this channel. Let me know if I'm right, guys, though. Then we see them go up the stairs onto the top of this large structure that I think would become the London Bridge below. I love how it's designed, given it's all in construction, still given the setting of the Industrial Revolution. The slow yet building Zimmer theme brings the showdown of Irene, Holmes, and Blackwood. Irene falling to a lower level safe. Now we get this beyond awesome duel between Holmes and Blackwood that I have to say has never been outdone in any film for me, because it's all set up so brilliantly and neither person ever has the upper hand until Holmes uses his wits to tie a rope around Blackwood's foot to a larger anchor. Then as the rope ties around Blackwood's foot, the Raven makes a return appearance, which it hadn't the first time Blackwood quote-unquote died, signaling this is his real death, furthering the conclusion that this is literal film literature. I love how Holmes makes all his conclusions about the case based on his previous deductions in such a thematically brilliant way that only RDJ can achieve through his acting prowess, and directed this well by the master, Guy Ritchie. I love how it goes back and forth on who has the upper hand. Then Blackwood dies because of his own machinations, like any great murder mystery. After this, Irene and Holmes have an epilogal conversation about Moriarty and the storm that's coming. Now we get the brilliant shot encompassing all of London at the center of it all, the hanging Blackwood. If anything's symbolism, that's it. Now we get literally the most hilarious scene of the film, where we see Holmes hanging himself. In their room, quite casually too. He explains how Blackwood was able to avoid dying during the first hanging, as he slowly loses the blood circulation in his throat, which is hilarious. Then he explains how he faked death. Then we find that Moriarty has struck again, when a police officer came to check out Blackwood's device, recovering a piece of the device, killing the said police officer. Then we end with the line, "Case reopened," getting brilliant end credits that were designed so well, paired with Zimmer's amazing soundtrack. Pure brilliance. That is the end. I conclude this video essay with the conclusion that Sherlock Holmes is the perfect film as literature. What you think about the film is up to you, but I highly recommend that you check it out and its sequel, Game of Shadows, in which we get the Professor as the main antagonist. Now, we interact this program with a message from our sponsors. Time for some about the director before we cap this off. My man, Guy Ritchie, is well known for fast cuts, dynamic camera movements, and fast-paced storytelling. Ritchie was born in Hatfield, Hertfordshire, the second of two children of Amber Parkinson and Captain John Vivian Ritchie, former Seaforth Highlanders serviceman and advertising executive. He has an older sister, Tabitha, and a half-brother, Kevin, who was born to Amber Parkinson and put up for adoption. After Ritchie's first project on a short film, The Hard Case, in 1995. In 1998, Ritchie met Matthew Vaughn, nephew of Peter Morton, the guy who wrote the best X-Men movie. And yes, I'm talking about X-Men First Class. So anyone who thinks otherwise can suck it. And he was the co-founder of the Hard Rock Cafe chain. Vaughn had been working in Los Angeles and expressed interest in producing Ritchie's directorial debut, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, in 1998, which is a total banger. It took 15 months to secure financial backing. Trudy Styler served as an executive producer. She said, I've always liked bad boy movies. Me too. Ritchie on his creative process. My creative process has never been something I can put into words. It's very random, very scattered, and can sometimes lead down dark alleyways and dead ends. Me too, Ritchie. What I will say is I think any director needs to immerse himself in both real life and in history to fully open up creative processes. And you must be prepared for the reality that any creative process worth its salt needs to be revised, reworked, and on occasion thrown out the window entirely. That is so true on so many levels, coming from a guy who is a screenwriter. Ritchie has cited Quentin Tarantino and Sergio Leone as influences on his work, who are two brilliant filmmakers, and if you haven't checked out their work, you should. However, he has stated just about every film, any good film that's ever been made, has an influence on me. But then how much of it, I have no idea. He has complimented several films, including The Long Good Friday in 1980, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966, which is cinema, Seventh Samurai in 1954, and Once Upon a Time in the West in 1968. When asked about the influence of criminals Ronald and Reginald Cray, Ritchie states, it's inevitable. Everything more or less of the old school villainy relates back to the Krays at some point. And the Krays were a lot worse than everyone thinks they are. And I know what those boys were doing was 100 times worse than what everyone thought was going on. So it's inevitable that anything that is genuine and old and British will somehow have something to do with the Krays. Ritchie's films often incorporate memorable and colorful characters. For instance, Irish Barker, Mickey O'Neill in Snatch, and crime boss Hatchet Harry in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. In his crime films, there is also fragmented dialogue, with many characters behaving menacingly and using Cockney slang. The portrayal of the British class system has also been explored. Costume designer for The Gentleman, Michael Wilkinson, said each character has an iconic, memorable look, a little larger than life. Fast-paced and energetic action scenes serve as cinematic choices, as well as placing his characters in combat or violent situations. Ritchie has used fast cutting and slow motion to build momentum in the story, and to create a high-impact viewing experience, respectively. He is also known to use interweaving stories in a non-linear narrative, such as a circular plot in his films. This is found in the case of Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and Sherlock Holmes. Before he could finance his first feature film in 1998, he did a short The Hard Case to win investors for his first film, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, which became an international success and convinced the majority of critics. As did his following film, Snatch, in which he plays different storylines with small criminals who act stupid, which makes it comedic, and I should know. He helped Jason Statham get his start and even convinced superstar Brad Pitt to join his cast for Snatch. After this promising start, he began to focus on Madonna's career. He did a music video for her and also cast her for his next feature film, Swept Away. The film was a huge disappointment, creatively and financially. He won the Golden Raspberry, the anti-Oscar for Worst Director. After this disaster, he didn't release his next movie, Revolver, until 2005. Another gangster movie, which was less comedic, as well as Rock'n'Rolla, they weren't financially successful, but proved Ritchie was still learning his craft. Revolver is the movie he's personally most satisfied with, and it finally opened the door to bigger blockbusters in Hollywood, where he debuted his 2009 interpretation of Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. Ritchie showed he could do a Hollywood blockbuster without compromising his creative trademarks too much. You still see Ritchie's techniques. Sherlock Holmes and the sequel were both box office successes. After The Man from U.N.C.L.E., based on the television show with the same name, and King Arthur from 2017 with Charlie Hunnam. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name there. You have a weird last name. He celebrated his biggest box office success with the live-action remake of Aladdin, which is a banger. The reason Sherlock Holmes is my 9th favorite film of all time is the incredibly engaging and brilliantly done action, the great performances from all the actors, the thrilling mystery, and the breathtaking directing from Guy Ritchie that inspires me as a director and brings me to the conclusion that this is the best mystery film. And this is the perfect translation of what a Sherlock Holmes story should be and what literature could be in film. So tune in next time to talk about the next film on my top 10 list, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a good night.
right, keep the physicality. And action!
In recreating Sherlock Holmes, you see that he was even stranger than could be imagined.
There's loads to be interpreted from the originals, and loads that we've locked in our minds that's wrong. What we've tried to do is take him back to his origin as essentially a more visceral character, more of an adventurer.
This is not your grandfather, Sherlock Holmes.
The whole thing is just being reinvented as something much more dynamic.
There's the refined quality to it, and at the same time, it's very rough and tumble. It's got that Guy Ritchie feeling to it.
It just feels new. It feels fresh. It feels like you're seeing this for the first time.
Watson, what have you done?
I went to boarding school when I was 6, and what they did then was if you were good, they used to play you Sherlock Holmes stories. They had speakers in each room, and if you were bad, they used to switch off the stories.
Sherlock Holmes I fell in love with, as I think probably every young boy did. And I knew there was something there and a way to do it that wasn't quite what we'd seen before. The images I saw in my head as I read these books were completely different from anything I'd seen in any of the previous movies.
Your boys have done a magnificent job obliterating any potential evidence.
Yes, but at least they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
The mental image we all have of Sherlock Holmes as a short-haired, clean-shaven, stiffly starched guy with a deerstalker hat and the pipe and all that kind of stuff.
What happened to Sherlock Holmes is he became this rather posh, homogenized individual, the quintessential lofty toff.
What of the coffin?
Well, we are in the process of bringing it up now.
I see. At what stage of the process? Contemplative.
He knew everything, and he always figured it out, and he was a bit snooty about it, but no one seemed to give him too much guff because they needed the information he had. He was one of those guys.
And action!
But the truth is, the more you look into Conan Doyle's books, you know, it's such a rich character, such a rich world.
Rolling.
The books, some of them were very much small deductive pieces, and some of them were big adventures.
By going back to the original stories, you see that it isn't a dusty old chestnut. It is fresh.
We want to show it in a way that we've never seen before. And in fact, we're being truer to the source material than maybe some of the previous films were able to be. Because we have the technology to build a scope much bigger than any of the previous versions were able to.
You want to get bang, bang, bang. Using his element. You want to get a staccato, regimented smash, smash. Yeah, he's in his element.
I always used to describe it as the Guy Ritchie version of a Sherlock Holmes movie because his style of cinema is so fresh and modern and sort of kinetic and fun.
You do know what you're drinking is meant for eye surgery.
Guy's a perfect director for this reimagination of Sherlock Holmes because he's an innovator and he's kind of reinventing himself as well. Early on in his career, I think he really changed filmmaking and inspired a lot of directors since.
If you put his natural sort of intelligence into the period setting, it works wonderfully well.
What are the walls?
Oh, she's covered. Enough, please. Guy knows exactly how to combine action, the adventure, the scope, the sense of humor, and get great performances out of these actors.
Them asking Guy to do it was a stroke of genius.
Good. The more it's like that.
He's brilliant at physicalizing drama.
3, 2, 1, bang!
You know, it is very, very action-packed, and he's so incredibly good at that. He always says, I need you to really huff and puff through this one, you know? He always says, huff and puff, I need some huff and puff.
And then you're off. And then the camera goes too.
Okay, stand by to go again.
If you release the handbrake and let the whole thing just free fall and have the balls to go with it, you know, great things happen.
And Guy's been brave enough and generous enough to let us do that.
I told you you'd be coming out the top window, soldier boy. There isn't any way you'd be coming over that terrace.
Well, technically, that isn't the top window, is it, sailor boy?
Anyway, anywho. Boom. I don't know, you got to watch out for the old stuntman struggle. Okay. There was a bit of danger of that going on.
Guy's a real man. He's a martial artist. I'm a martial artist. We meet on that level. We meet as lovers of film and lovers of kind of almost thumbing our noses at what the status quo is and saying we can do something as cool as that. In fact, we think for us, for our take on it, our likings, we can beat it.
06 Juliet, take 4.
No, harder, go. Yeah. Come on, dude. Punch me in the stomach. Punch me in the stomach. Go.
When this project first came to me, I thought we should go for, I know they've already done the young Sherlock Holmes, but we were thinking about doing a sort of late 20s version. But once I got to know Robert a bit, it seemed conspicuously obvious after a while, and now it's almost ridiculous to think back that it could have been any other actor.
So someone will set it.
We'll need to
From the
slide
time.
it in
So
as you're up.
discovery, though? When's the discovery? The discovery, well, let me think here. After the throw-in.
He's already knocked you over there and you're there organically. Stay over there.
I mean, Robert is the perfect Sherlock Holmes, really, isn't he? He's so brilliant, so funny, and so quick-witted, and he thinks a bit like Sherlock Holmes, I think.
Holmes, what are you doing?
Nothing.
Are you wearing a
False nose? No.
Tell me, that woman. Actually, it does have its own charm.
He can fizz at a higher level when he's improvising, and it's amazing that in the story, Holmes has that quality that he cannot help seeing clues.
There's a lot of elements there that I couldn't help but infuse him with. He's always had a sense of humor.
You know, in another life, you'd have made an excellent criminal.
Yes, and you, sir, an excellent policeman.
He's a bit of a weirdo in that he spends most of his time chasing down details that people would go out of their minds if they had to engage.
Several sets of initials scored into the lid. Excellent.
Let's cut there and reset.
The archetype to me is the person who understands what all you normal people are doing out there, but he's a man on a mission and he represents adventure incarnate.
Fist patella. Summary prognosis, conscious in 90 seconds, full faculty recovery. Unlikely.
Well, it's all in the books, you know. He's a single-stick fighter, a master of the strange art of Baritsu, bare-knuckle boxer, all that stuff.
He was the first martial artist, really in Western culture.
He's an action hero.
I've got to tell you, Robert is a very exceptional human being. In Iron Man, you saw that he was physical, but I didn't realise he was as physical as he is.
You all right? Yeah. Let's do it again.
Luckily, he's been doing Wing Chun for 5 years, so he's good. He's fast. He is really fast.
As opposed to a sort of underhook.
Sherlock Holmes studied something called Baritsu, and we've tried to integrate that into a sort of street level.
He is not just portraying that in the movie, he's walking the walk. That philosophy, that discipline, is something that he shares very much in common now with the character.
He brings his full arsenal, and out comes something you've never seen before or never expected before.
One more, please. Now, you know it wouldn't be bad. Let him do one. How do you say one more, please, in French? Encore, s'il vous plaît.
What's exciting about working with someone like Robert is that it becomes very much its own.
Relax. I'm a doctor.
The riskiest character in this whole story is Watson, because he's always been depicted as being a certain way.
Watson is portrayed in the movies in the Basil Rathbone films with Nigel Bruce, who's kind of a heavy guy like me, who sits around and talks about things.
A few people were surprised when I was cast as Watson, but when you go back to the original text, you realise that, in fact, this is a guy in his mid to late 30s. He has just left the army. He was a bit of a war hero.
Watson is a badass, a ladies' man, a man of action.
I'll go inside you like that. Yeah.
Well, Jude, I think, embodies exactly the idea they had for a modern Watson.
Watson has been coined Hotson on this set because all the girls think he's hot.
It's no mystery that gals like Jude, but that would be too easy, so he's almost withdrawing and playing someone who's just a little bit proper, but it's appropriate for the period.
He's very much the alkaline to Robert's acid.
Look longer at the top. It could maybe that you keep me.
The second we met, we just started bouncing ideas off each other, and we were very much on the same page, which is a pretty eccentric page.
Holmes, does your depravity know no bounds?
No.
It was clear that we wanted to create a chemistry that was both, you know, incredibly tight, but also there's that wonderful sort of humor where friends bicker.
You're not making any sense. You're not human.
And one of the big inspirations for Guy with this has been Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and there's that quality.
I suppose I'm interested in the partnership between men and the humor and the irony and the quirks that go with it.
What was that about saving bullets?
They captured the levity and the humor, but at the same time they captured the sincerity.
We've just managed to keep this relationship, and Robert and I have worked very, very hard on it, alive. And it's been nothing short of great fun.
Dinner?
Wonderful.
Royale?
My favorite.
It's too good, dude. It's too good. Bring it from the top.
Still rolling.
B camera.
It is kind of a bit of a love letter to Victorian London as well.
London was always a character, obviously, because, I mean, Sherlock Holmes is synonymous with London.
You have this incredibly fascinating, engaging, and dangerous city, and he knows every inch of it.
After that, the carriage forked left and right, a telltale bump of the Fleet conduit.
The locations have been amazing. You know, I'm a Londoner born and bred, and we were going to places I'd never been or never seen.
We had to be here to shoot locations, and, you know, we're running down real streets.
The feeling of doing this picture in London is incredible. I mean, it is really a location movie.
The work that we did out on the streets, you could not have done in the studio, not at that scale.
Whether it's through incredible sets or CGI or whatever it is, we can really go back to London of 1891 and recreate it.
They've built us docks, they've built us factories, they've built us boats. It's just fantastic to turn up and, you know, make a big film.
He's presenting it in the Guy Ritchie way, which is down and dirty and feels very authentic.
I hope you get there by breakfast, because the boys are getting hungry.
Guy and London just go hand in hand, and I think it's exciting for him to be able to go back and say, well, what would it have looked like then?
Partage!
3, 2, 1.
I was attracted to the project because we could reinvent an iconic English figure.
What Guy brings is something that just weeds out all of that old-fashioned cliche from it.
What excites me is that I feel that we have made a movie that's very specific to itself.
I think we've been faithful, but I do think we've also injected it with life.
Previous productions of Sherlock Holmes have obviously been shackled by one thing or another, but we really are going for it.